This is Limerick City, which looks like everything here developed at random over the years, and nothing is connected in any way to anything else. But nothing could be further from the truth. There is a hidden network, and we know all networks have center points and nodes and all that, and we're going to look at one of them. What's your first impression when you look up at this copper roof? Was it built to look pretty? There are 8 circular windows around the circumference, and each window consists of 8 glass segments around a central quadrant. It sits on top of a flat roof, which is a slightly elongated octagon. It's made from copper. We know that because it's greenish turquoise in colour, and that's what happens when natural rainwater is a mild carbonic acid, and that prompts the copper to react with any sulfur that might be in the air to give you copper sulfate, which is the bluey-green coating. It's the same as what used to be called bluestone. That's what people used to spray potatoes with to stop the blight fungus. But leaving all that aside, let's have a look at where it is and what it might be. It's located in the old part of Limerick City, and it is currently the Limerick College of Art and Design on Clare Street. And for 142 years before that, from 1868, it was the Good Shepherd Convent and Magdalen Laundry. There's the 1842 Ordnance Survey map showing a monk's school, a cotton factory, and the Magdalen Asylum. There's the current view from the front entrance, and there's one of the interior spaces, which was formerly the church. Now, with all the octagons and rectangles, it's quite easy to put an axis on this, and we'll follow this line away to the south. Google Earth tells us we're on a heading of 171.2 degrees, not quite due south, and it takes us to Ardpatrick in County Limerick, down near Kilmallock, where we have a churchyard, cemetery, an old church, and the remains of a round tower. So if we take the big copper roof with its 8 windows and the 8-sided flat roof that it sits on as an octagon, and if we plot the line to Ardpatrick there as our red line coming away to the south, we know from other octagonal structures, like Steele's turret on my earlier video and various others, that if we go out the 8 corners of the octagon and go out through the 8 flat sides on the octagon, we can expect to find quite interesting associated locations. Let's jump straight into the first one. That first corner on the octagon is 22.5 degrees away from the Ardpatrick line, and 10 kilometres down that line is Kilpeakin Church. Looking at that angle again, 171.2 is Ardpatrick, plus 22.5 degrees gives us 193.7, and that's the line on which we hit the spire at Kilpeakin. There's the church there. It's an old Church of Ireland church near Crecora. Now, moving on 22.5 degrees, we're going out at 45 degrees from the Ardpatrick line, and we're going out through the middle of the flat side there in the octagon. Our heading is going to be 216.2 degrees, and straight away we hit the spire on St. John's Cathedral, only a few hundred metres away. There's that 45-degree angle. There's the spire at St. John's Cathedral. It's, I think, number 5 in the highest spires in Ireland. That's 260 odd feet. So let's move on again. That 216.2 degrees plus another 22.5 degrees takes us to the next corner in the octagon, and that's at a heading of 238.7 degrees. Only a few hundred metres away, we hit the spire on the little church there in front of St. John's Square. Next one is the middle of the next flat side there on the octagon, and it's going to be at 90 degrees to the Ardpatrick line. That's 171.2 degrees plus 90 is a heading of 261.2 degrees. Straight away we hit St. Michael's Church. We hit the apex of that gable there. That's where that little round porthole window is, similar to the little porthole windows on the copper roof. And we hit the building at 45 degrees precisely, which leads me to think that if we went away at the other 45-degree angle, we'd find someplace else of interest. But that's for another day. Now, next angle on the octagon is the next point. It's 22.5 degrees further on from that St. Michael's line. That's 261.2 degrees plus 22.5 puts us on a heading of 283.7 degrees, and we hit the Hunt Museum building. We come in there at 90 degrees to the facade and hit the building dead center. Furthermore, if we continue that line another few hundred meters across the river, we arrive at the front door of the registry office at St. Camillus' Hospital. It's the location where you go in Limerick to register births, deaths and marriages, and that line hits their front door after going over the centre of the Hunt Museum building. Let's do just one more. Moving on from the Hunt Museum angle of 283.7 degrees, we add another 22.5. That brings us to 306.2 degrees of a heading, and that takes us to An Túr Fara on Inisheer. Now, you may say Inisheer is a long way away. Are you sure? I am. Let me explain. There's that line all the way across County Clare and out to Inisheer. And working back towards Limerick, we find that the first thing our line does is it goes over the top of the tower at Donegal in Doolin. There's George Carbis's photo of the top of that tower on a frosty morning in March. And there's a very interesting fractal antenna there on the top. We'll talk about them in more detail sometime soon. But anyway, following our line back towards Limerick, the next thing that happens is that we go over the top of this standing stone in Clare Castle. That standing stone is a meeting point for various other alignment lines, as is the next stop on our line back to Limerick. That is the Druid's Altar at Carnelly. What we have there is a circular ring fort type construction with a limestone platform on one side, and on the limestone platform once stood a 3-metre standing stone. Now, the standing stone, as you can see from the photograph, has fallen down, but that's what's known locally as the Druid's Altar. The line goes over the top of where the standing stone would have stood, and a few kilometres further on, our line goes through the centre of the stone fort at Mohan. That's the same stone fort which is aligned with stuff at Dromoland Castle, Gregan's Castle and 20 other places. Next stop is just south of Six Mile Bridge, where our line goes diagonally through that little cemetery. Then it carries on and it goes through the middle of the courtyard at King John's Castle. It would be interesting to know if there was something which stood there at the centre of that courtyard. So for one final thought, looking back along that line across County Clare, all these locations are meeting points for other alignments. What if we were to apply the octagon methodology to all these locations? Would we end up with some sort of crystal lattice whereby everything is connected to everything else, directly or indirectly? It would take time and computing power to map all of it, but what if there's a structure there whereby everything is connected and you can create this impenetrable zone which reverberates at a specific frequency? Do let me know what you think. Thank you.